The conclave of teeth had never been challenged, not in 3,000 cycles, not since the great clans first gathered beneath the twin moons of Carthag's prime and swore their oaths in blood and starlight. Vorin stood at the center of the ceremonial circle, his silver fur catching the pale light filtering through the chamber's crystalline dome. He was magnificent, a prime specimen of the Carthag's warrior caste, standing nearly 3 meters tall with muscles that rippled like liquid steel beneath his pelt. The council had chosen well. Every elder nodded in approval as he raised his clawed hand to accept the Fang of Dominion, the ancient relic that would mark him as alpha of the entire northern reaches. By the law of claw and fang, Elder Macros intoned, his voice echoing through the vast chamber, we name Vorin, son of Thornak, as Alpha. Let all cubs and warriors bow to. The massive doors exploded inward, not with violence, but with the excited energy of 24 Carthag's cubs who tumbled over each other in their haste to enter. Behind them, trying desperately to maintain some semblance of order, walked a human girl who barely reached Vorin's chest. Rhea Carter looked entirely out of place in the sacred chamber. Her plain gray jumpsuit bore the insignia of the Terran diplomatic corps, and her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. She carried a datapad in one hand and what appeared to be a bag of snacks in the other. I am so sorry, she said, her voice cutting through the shocked silence. I told them we couldn't interrupt, but they insisted. She didn't get to finish. The cubs swarmed her, chirping and yipping in their high-pitched voices, pressing close to her legs and reaching up with tiny clawed hands. One particularly bold cub, Chakra, the daughter of a prominent warrior, climbed up Rhea's back and perched on her shoulders, nuzzling against her neck. The council members stood frozen, their elaborate ceremonial robes suddenly seeming ridiculous. Elder Macros's mouth hung open, the Fang of Dominion still extended toward Vorin, who had gone perfectly still. This is unprecedented, Macros finally managed. Vorin's eyes narrowed. Remove them. This is a sacred rite. But Rhea was already kneeling down, letting the cubs cluster around her. She opened the bag and began distributing small protein cubes, specially formulated for young Carthag's physiology, Vorin noted with irritation. She had done her research. I know this looks bad, Rhea said, glancing up at the council, but there's something you need to understand. The cubs won't accept Vorin as alpha. The cubs do not choose. Vorin's voice was a growl that would have sent lesser beings fleeing. The council chooses. Strength chooses. Tradition chooses. And yet, Rhea said calmly, standing up with Chakra still perched on her shoulders, they're here. With me. Not with you. It had started 3 months ago, when Rhea arrived as part of the human delegation to negotiate a mining treaty. She was supposed to be a junior translator, barely worth noticing, but she had done something no one expected. She had asked to visit the cubs' den. The Carthags, for all their warrior culture, treasured their young above all else. But adults rarely entered the nursery caves. It was considered beneath their dignity, something for the aging and the weak to handle. The cubs were fed, protected, and trained by lower caste members, while the warriors focused on what they considered important: combat, honor, and politics. Rhea had spent hours in those caves. She learned their games, their songs, their small fears and large dreams. She didn't treat them like warriors in training. She treated them like children, and they had loved her for it. This human has bewitched them, Vorin snarled, taking a step forward. Several cubs immediately positioned themselves between him and Rhea, their tiny growls almost comical, except for the deadly serious look in their eyes. Elder Macros finally found his voice. Miss Carter, you must understand our ways. The Alpha is chosen by a council of elders who haven't set foot in a nursery cave in decades, Rhea interrupted, and several council members flinched. I've read your histories. I know what your species used to be before you became obsessed with warrior culture. You were pack builders, family units. The strongest leader was the one the cubs trusted because cubs have an instinct for who will protect them. Humans know nothing of our instincts, Vorin said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. No? Rhea gestured to the cubs surrounding her. Then why are they here? Why did they run away from their caregivers, burst into your most sacred ceremony and come to me? Little Vorik, barely old enough to walk steadily, toddled up to Rhea and raised his arms. She picked him up without hesitation, cradling him against her chest. The cub chirped contentedly and closed his eyes. They feel safe with you, Elder Silvara said softly. She was the oldest council member, her fur gone white with age. I remember when we were like this, when the Alpha's first duty was to the pack, not to glory. This is madness. Voron's claws extended, scraping against the stone floor. You would give leadership to a human? A creature without fangs or claws? She couldn't lead a hunt, couldn't defend our borders. I don't want to lead your people, Rhea said quietly. That's not my place, but look at them, Voron, really look. The cubs had formed a protective circle around her, their eyes fixed on the warrior who would be Alpha. In their young faces was something Voron had forgotten to look for: judgment. Not of strength or fighting prowess, but of character. The Alpha should be someone the cubs trust, Chakra said from Rhea's shoulders, her voice clear and certain. Rhea says an Alpha protects, you only fight. Silence fell over the chamber like snow. Elder Silvara stepped forward, her ancient eyes moving from Voron to Rhea to the cubs. There is a tradition, she said slowly, older than the conclave itself, the choosing of cubs. Before we had councils and ceremonies, the pack's youngest would decide who led. We abandoned it because we thought ourselves wiser. You would resurrect a tradition dead for 3 millennia because of one human? Voron demanded. No, Silvara said. I would resurrect it because we have forgotten what strength truly means. This human girl, with no claws or fangs, has done what none of us could. She has earned the trust of our future. That is power we have forgotten to value. Macros looked at his fellow council members, reading the uncertainty in their faces. Then he did something that would be spoken of for generations. He lowered the fang of dominion. Perhaps, he said carefully, we have been choosing wrong. Voron stood alone in the center of the circle, magnificent and powerful, and utterly defeated, not by strength, but by the simple truth that strength alone was not enough. Rhea shifted Vorik in her arms and looked at Voron directly. You could be a great Alpha, she said, but first, you need to learn what these cubs already know. Leadership isn't about being the strongest. It's about knowing who needs protection and making sure they get it. The cubs began to chirp, a sound that grew and echoed through the chamber. It was their song of acceptance, of family, of pack. And though no crown was placed on any head that day, something more important happened. The Carthex remembered what they had forgotten, taught by a human girl who understood that sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to kneel down and listen to those who are small. Voron left the chamber in silence. But 3 days later, he was seen in the nursery caves, awkwardly trying to learn a cub's game while Rhea watched with an encouraging smile. The council never did crown him Alpha. They didn't need to. He had found a better teacher.